Ooh, live. We are live. Good. Look at we got a troublemaker here. There's the troublemaker.
Yes, look at it. I made so much trouble. The ruptured water line came through at about 9 o'clock last night.
Did they fix it?
Yeah, the good old boys in Birmingham. And I can say they were boys because I went around looking for them by 9 o'clock. And they were indeed the good men from Birmingham Waterworks, even though we're on private Shelby County water.
Fancy.
Here we go.
Well, good morning, all you awesome people out there in the Omniverse. Oh, I'm gonna have to do something about that.
Why, Jesse?
Your way.
Right?
It's awesome, Justin. Blocking you
You're
off.
a first timer. Jump on in. How's that? Is that more good?
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
Let us know if you're here. If you're a lurker, drop a blue heart. We love the lurkers. And we have like a whole screen full of glamorous human beings today. Who's out there? Let's see. I got to go to the comments. Where did the comments go?
Jim is on.
Oh, here we go. We got Mr. Jim Torres is on the job, on the phone, but I'm here. Good morning.
Right.
Hey.
Good morning. We're gonna have a lot. He's gonna have a lot of things going on in his ears this morning.
Here we go. Look, he started it. Bruce says we got the dream team on here today.
This is his fault, right? This is his fault.
This is
Okay.
absolutely his fault.
His fault, yeah.
Bruce, you started this ball rolling, and here we are. Mr. Bradley, morning. What's up, Bradley?
Good morning, bro.
Oh my goodness, we got all kinds of people showing. Marcus
Whoa.
Turner, how you
Oh,
doing?
good morning, Marcus. He had a let me think. He did something with Adam this week. I can't remember what it was. Adam posted something about, but I don't know if it was a podcast or something, but anyway.
He did.
Well, you know what? I need to make a point here. So Bruce coming in from YouTube land. Folks, tribe members out there, our next live stream, we're going to be doing exclusively from YouTube. So we're running a little experiment. I'll make sure I get a link in the chat, in the comments, so that we can get there. And as we go posting between now and then on the LinkedIn, we'll make sure that you have the link to go to the YouTube channel, follow, subscribe, all those things. Running a little experiment. Let's see what we learn from that. And we got Mr. Robert Van Cott coming in from Hudson Valley. What's going on, Robert?
Good morning, Robert. Thank you for joining us. I want to make sure you give Robert some love and go follow him and connect with him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I don't know if they told you, Robert, but like you're going to get warmed by the tribe. And then we got a lurker, Adam Bruce.
Sounds so often. Look, they're fancy. Okay, they're voyeurs.
Voyeurs. Oh,
Is that better?
Is that better? Yeah.
We're on a journey.
Then we got another voyeur. Lurker. What's up, man? Oh man, did you see his post? So he had like this carousel from.
Oh, I already shared it with like many of our superintendents, and one of our like high performing superstar superintendents replied back, and he's like, "I'm about to repurpose this." He was like super excited.
A bunch of people, like it blew up. Congratulations, Matt, from the Construction Yeti, the Himalayan Hoss, Matt Graves, Lurker.
Yes, it was awesome.
And Justin, look, we got to hang out with Justin yesterday. How was that?
Yeah, on emotional bungee jumpers.
Yeah. Another troublemaker.
Woo, good morning.
Good morning, Rachel.
Oh, Rachel. Man, we got all kinds of
She's
people.
jumping on specifically because I feel the emotional labor that is created because of me. I feel like that's why she's here today.
I love it. So you're the guilty party.
I confess.
Buddy Brumley's here.
Good morning, buddy.
I needed that one. I needed Buddy to tell me good morning. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, Clyde.
So I'm releasing I got to interview Clyde on the podcast on Learning Initiative. So that's coming out. That'll hit this evening sometime. Y'all need to check it out. The Chief Marketeer. What's up, Chief Martin?
He's more lurking.
No more lurking. Lurkers are welcome. We love you, lurkers. So Okay, so that's enough jamming my jaws. Let's help the people out there in the Omniverse understand what all the glamour up here on the screen is all about. So please, Jan, would you like help us introduce all these amazing people up here?
Yes. So first, I'm really not sure what we're talking about today. Let's just start with that. And so we have this topic, emotional labor. So before we get into why we're even here and how these ladies got here, like I want to make sure they get to like introduce themselves because Jesse and I are on here all the time, but y'all aren't. So I'm going to go around and just kind of, hey, introduce yourself quickly. What is your spiel? You know, why did you show up to this crazy Saturday morning cartoons show? And then we're going to get kicked off on what the freaking topic is today. Cindy, why don't you go first?
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Cindy Becerra, and I work as a development programs coordinator for Baker Construction Enterprises. And I've been in the construction industry for close to 10 years now. And I am here because you guys have just seriously helped my mental life so much. And I love everything that we talk about. It helps with my personal development, with my professional growth. And I just want to be able to add more to give back to you guys too. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I've already done that, and you've joined us on a couple of things with emotional bungee jumpers and reciprocal propulsion. And so we've got some fun things to talk about today. Okay, Sarah, why are you here today?
Good morning. I'm Sarah Ganella. I'm actually a partner and VP at Full Sail Partners. We are a reseller of Deltec. And I actually have a podcast as well. And I was actually inspired by Jen and Jess to actually take the leap, take the jump. And my podcast is Boy Bass, which stands for Bring Out Your Badass Self. And so for me, I love helping people. And so this topic just really is something that sort of is the essence of a lot of the things that really resonate for me. And Jen and Jess have just inspired me. So that's why I'm here today.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. That is awesome. Okay, Ms. Maria, why are you here today?
So Jen has this thing where she likes for me to introduce myself, and then my mind goes blank and she points to me which questions I missed. So I'm Maria Martin. I love construction. I've worked at a roofing supplier and then a GC, and now I help all of those people with software.
Yes, for Procore specifically.
Yes, specifically Procore.
Yes, so she is like a rock star, level up, motivator, influencer, impactor, implementer, all those fun things.
Yes. Oh, I got myself this time. And why am I here, right?
Oh, yes. How did you get here?
How did I get here? Well, I took an awesome shower. And then I just showed up. No. So this was I'm always up for a good bit of what do they call good trouble?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. So Jesse, we checked that box, right?
Boxes checked. Thank you for letting the Omniverse know who y'all are, folks. I just posted the link to the YouTube channel. Again, click, subscribe, like, whatever, all those things.
Yes.
And I don't want to forget, we got some people. So we got Mr. Jared Wilson.
Ooh,
what's up, Jared?
Awesome. So welcome, Jared Blueheart. Jared works with us, and he's amazing. And he had some really cool experiences this week because he went to Jason Schroeder's boot camp. And he got yes, and he just it completely. And so anyway, I'm super excited to dig more into all of that. So Jared, thank you for being here.
Yes. And then we have Mr. Mike O'Felix. He meant good morning.
Okay. Good morning.
That was awesome. He is not a worker. And then Mr. Ian Smith. We all know Mr. Ian Smith.
Good
We
morning.
missed you yesterday, Ian, on the jumpers call, but that's okay because guess what? We have a second group of emotional bungee jumpers, and we're meeting. When are we meeting? The second Friday. Yep, 2 weeks. Second Friday of the month, folks. If y'all are interested in signing up, I would love to have y'all there because I don't know, Cindy. Maria, what is it? Is there any vulnerability, connection, meaningful conversations that happen there?
I mean, yesterday I thought we just watched like a PowerPoint and somebody going on.
APIs all the way.
Yeah, love PowerPoint. I'm just kidding, everyone. It's not. There's 0 PowerPoints. Yes, we had some paradigm shifts. I think people learned some new words that they liked, and people definitely got vulnerable. Or maybe it was just other people.
I doubt it.
I felt like I was talking to a wall, Maria.
That's right. I was the brick wall. I forgot.
That's right. Maria was the wall the whole time.
I improved my conditions today.
So folks out there in the Omniverse, I'm going to spend very little time up here on the screen. And the reason for that is our last session, we had the after party, which the after party's out there. Today we'll have it 5 minutes after we close this call. And the conversation got deep. Again, our good friend, Mr. Bruce, not sure why he did it, but I think it was like the perfect thing. Like he was like, hey, Sarah, Cindy, Maria, can you please expound on this topic, whatever the topic was? And I walked away from it like, y'all like rocked it. And the words that stuck with me was this idea about emotional labor. And so question to the folks out there in the Omniverse is, what comes to your mind when you hear emotional labor? Leave that in the chat and that'll help us. That'll help bail Jennifer out, because Jennifer was playing hooky at the last after party. And so she's going to be trying, like, really, truly, y'all, this is all just because Jennifer came in late, missed the thing, and everybody has to stop so we can get her caught back up. No, I'm joking. But yeah, so Jennifer, I did my best to explain this to her. And also because of the conversation was so meaningful, I felt like bringing it to the rest of the tribe would be valuable, because to use your language, Maria, like the paradigm shift, right? It's this unseen thing that we take for granted. I'll say it this way, that I take for granted, that I get offended because other people take it for granted. But it's like this, for a lot of us, it's just this thing that we're not even aware of. And so that thing that I'm talking about is the emotional labor. And so folks, I'm going to bounce off the screen and I'm going to cause havoc in another space. I will be here in the background. But ladies, it's all you guys and folks out there in the Omniverse. What are your thoughts? What do you think of when you hear emotional labor? Handing it over to y'all.
Don't get caught up, because we know there's always a conversation, multiple conversations happening in the chat. Like, be in there, make sure that you're stirring the pot, but like, don't forget about us. Okay, so we're gonna start with ketchup. Okay, like I need you to catch me up. So 2 weeks ago we had the live stream, and then I had to not be in the after party because my daughter was getting confirmed. So I had to get off there and head to the church. So it was amazing, absolutely worth every bit of it. But I heard there was this magical, powerful conversation that happened. And then all of a sudden we're talking about it. And I'm like, so maybe I need a little bit of, what were your takeaways? Maybe what does it mean to you? And then from those conversations, we'll just keep pulling people in and expounding on, like, how do we deal with that? And what do these experiences look like? And what can we do to be better? So we're going to start with each of you. I'm going to need you to give me a little, kind of help me understand what happened in the after party and why is it important? So Miss Maria, you get to go first.
Thanks, Jen.
This is from you giving me emotional labor this morning, jumping on the call, that I'm paying you back right now.
Oh, I didn't understand that we were starting before 8.
Anyway,
so drop that down.
All you right now.
Thank you for having me. Takeaways. Okay. So I think that was probably the most meaningful part for me, because emotional labor is something that I've been familiar with for a few years. It's just that nobody else would talk about
Ooh,
right?
okay.
It was like Bruno. And so, right. And so then I just, kind of like made a little comment. And then however it works. Sarah and Cindy were like, pew, to the whole conversation. And I was just like, mute. Yes. And so that was really good for me. And then beyond that, not only to have other people speaking of it, but then also how it was received by the rest of the menfolk on the call.
Okay.
Right. Because traditionally it's a role for women, and that's why it's been a little bit ignored.
Okay. So what is emotional labor, Maria?
Emotional labor are things that I've been thinking about this one example all morning, and I'm really, really sorry if they're listening. It was your first week, and I have so much grace and compassion for you. Okay. But I had this person in their first week email and say something like, hey, can you, I need you to make 6 copies of this and then staple them in the top left corner. I need them by like 10 o'clock or something like that. I don't do that, right? That involves a little bit of manual labor, but it is emotional, right? Can you run this report for me? So it's that kind of stuff, making dinner reservations, right? Who did that? Who organized it? Who called the restaurant? Did they make sure that day is going to have a table for us? I don't know. Phone calls to doctors, right? I hate those. Or the utility companies, right? So all of those little things that just magically happen for people, keeping up with a grocery store list. What's going to be for dinner? The emotional choice and thought patterns that you have to expend to get the dinner, right? Not just thank you for cooking it. Thank you for planning it. Thank you for going to the grocery store. And thank you for making sure that we have dinner.
Oh, Maria, I love that because the planning part. Like sometimes my dad used to say when we were growing up, I have 3 brothers. And when we were growing up, single father, you can't just have a picnic. You can't just show up and then everyone's happy, got food, got games, got all these things. He's like, you can't just have a picnic. And it was like he'd say it. And so that is like what that means in my brain is that like what all went into it. What was the planning? What was all the coordination that happened to where when you show up, you have everything right there in front of you. Okay. So what does Justin say? Justin says emotional labor is the unseen effort, Maria, good job, the toll a situation or problem takes on you. Oh, so not just the planning, but the toll it takes on you. It's not just the time spent solving the problem, but the exhaustion of dealing with the intangibles of it. The exhaustion part, like that resonated because I'll get into this in a minute because we got to get through everybody first. But yes, Justin, 100%. Okay, so thank you, Maria. So we're going to move on. So Maria kind of gave her context of what that conversation was about. So Sarah, can you give us yours?
Yeah, for me, it was about someone who was getting very vulnerable. So we were having a conversation and that person was really opening up and asking questions. And for us, it was really listening to what that person was saying and providing them the empathy that they really needed in the situation that they were dealing with. And for me, that is what emotional labor a lot of times is as leaders, as coworkers, people in our industry. It's not and the best analogy that I can give to people is that physical labor is like construction workers. They're doing things with their hands. Cognitive labor are the software engineers, architects that are using their minds, where emotional labor is really people that are expending that emotional energy and helping others really in distress and prioritizing sometimes their emotional needs over their own. And so when you really think about emotional labor, it is all of the energy that you are exerting from an emotional perspective to try to help others. And I think we actually exemplified that even on the call and the after party.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, so what the very first thing you started with was empathy. Mm-hmm. You talked about that. And in my mind, like the way I've thought about empathy is, making sure that I can put myself in someone else's place. I can understand it. I can, I'm empathetic to them and their situation. Right. but I've never thought about it till you just said that, is the emotional labor that I still have to deal with to do that.
Yes.
Like they're dealing with stuff, and we sometimes need to allow ourselves to take a step back and really understand the situation we're in, the people, what they're dealing with, and be accepting of that or be cognizant of that. But the emotional labor on us to put ourselves in that space, I don't think we account for that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, what we got? Good morning, Jonathan. Thank you for being here. I'm not sure I've seen you before, so everyone in there, if you have been, sorry I missed you. Secondly, everyone go love on Jonathan, like him, comment, to let him know we're happy he's here. So good morning. Was lurking so hard I didn't even chime in earlier. Blue heart, blue heart, blue heart. Thank you. A quick one-word answer. When I think about emotional labor, I immediately think of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have to dig into that. So we'll get back to you, Jonathan. Thank you. Okay, so one more, and then we're going to talk about some more stuff. So, Miss Cindy, you were there at the after party, and you were part of this very charged conversation. Tell me, what your takeaways were. What did you get from it?
So the way that I define it, or the way that I think about it, is connecting the pieces between the person, problem, feeling, and expectation. Because one of the examples that the individual gave us was basically about a marriage, and it was explaining the situation of how, as a person, as the man, you're doing something for a woman, thinking this is what I'm doing it for this reason with this expectation, and I'm not getting the result that I wanted. So that's, a letdown of your expectation, and then you get in your feelings, and then you're focused on the problem and the person, and you're not seeing the right things at the right time, I guess, and that causes more issues. So that's why I think it's interesting that you mentioned marriage. Yes, uncommunicated expectations, definitely. So I think that has a really big, it's a really big component when you're dealing with multiple people, is, and when you work in your job and things like that. But definitely, trying to find how you work through those things with people. And I think that's the emotional labor part of it.
Ooh, okay, so you had the after party, and it sounds like there were a lot of takeaways. What was the one thing from the after party that you took and went and applied it this week and the last 2 weeks?
I took the what was the word I used? Oh my gosh, I can't think of the word right now. I'm going blank right now.
You don't have to say the word, but how did you apply it?
Basically acceptance. I guess that's the word, acceptance. Was trying to accept that even when things don't go your way or you have unmet expectations, how do you accept yourself in that without being swayed by another person or getting too caught up in the emotion of it?
Nice.
And I think that's kind of where I handed out homework as well, was basically reminding that person that, it's about your intention, that you can feel like other people are judging you based off of why you're trying to do what you're trying to do, but being more focused on the intention of why you chose to do that thing and not letting that person discourage you.
Okay, wonderful. So question, because Jesse and I talked a little bit about as we were planning this. And so he said, and I think Maria, you and Bruce called you out a little bit on all the men folks. And so in this after party, the three of you were very, oh, there we go. Love you, Bruce. Who you call men folks? So the conversation was, again, this is a very vulnerable conversation. Taps a little bit into some soft skills, but also a little bit of vulnerability. Jesse was very clear that three ladies stepped up and were very vocal and very much in a space that they could talk about some things. And a lot of these men folks kind of sat back and listened. Yeah. And they didn't just jump in. Okay. So I want to pose to the group, I'm not going to call anybody out. Why do we think, outside of just we're women, that this topic has not been talked about? And a lot of us are in construction, and so but we're going across industries at this point. We don't limit it. But why do we feel that emotional labor, which we've already owned, happens in everything we do every day, why do we not talk about it?
I would say it's a little bit about, and I think you touched on it, Sarah, with the feminine and masculine energy, where the masculine energy tends to be more logical, where feminine energy is taps more into the emotional side. And I think depending on, in the construction industry in particular, everything can be very logical sometimes because you're trying to get things done. And in order to do that, you have to kind of pull emotion out of it sometimes. So I think that for me in particular, that's kind of what I've seen. And I don't know if you want to elaborate more on that, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that when I think about this particular topic and this particular person, they were also asking some very pointed questions. They were feeling also judged, was one of the things that they talked about. And they were like, how do you deal with being judged? And I was like, I don't worry about it. And they were like, oh. And I said, really, when it boils down to it, I think the reason that women tend to be more in tune with this particular topic is we have had to try to figure out how do we deal with all this emotional things that we feel automatically, being in touch from a feminine perspective. And I always try to be careful about saying females and males. It's really feminine energy and masculine energy. And for the longest time, I was actually very more masculine energy, and I actually had to balance the two. But I think that really it is sometimes it is teaching people also how to handle boundary setting, how to say no is a complete sentence, and really about being your authentic self. And I think that women have really struggled with this over the years because we're so used to just giving up our emotions and doing what it takes, that we have had to try to figure these things out, because otherwise we continue to exert all of this energy and then don't feel like we're being appreciated. And I think that it's interesting because I feel like more men are starting to feel this way as well, because there are more things in our business and in our lives. We're having to balance those types of things. And so I think that men are like, oh, wow, yeah, I'm starting to see more of this as well, because women are working, men are working, and we have to balance that in our personal life. And then more women are starting to become leaders, and men are also dealing with these types of things as well. So I think we've just dealt with it longer.
Dealing. I like dealing. So I like the word dealing, because I don't think all of a sudden that men are just starting to have emotional labor. Like they didn't have it and now they have it, because they were still responsible for things. They still had to make sure things happened. And in the industry I work in, it's you show up and you do your job. And I talk a lot about the human element of our work, and that traditionally we are humans, we have families, we have feelings, we have injuries, we have mental health. There's things going on. There's a lot of things we deal with, and then we show up to work, and then we take the human hat off and we put the hard hat on, and then we go to work, and then all those things are not allowed, and then we step back out of the gate. And I talk a lot about that. And so they've been dealing with this stuff. They've just not had a space or even been safe enough to say it without, I feel, being judged or being, like you're weak. Because when I think of labor and I think of the emotional labor, when I think of labor, I think of hard work. Like that's for me, that's what I hear. When I hear labor, I think of hard work.
Right.
And so when you put emotional with that, like even if you're not a mother, women are caregivers. Women want to help make things better. And so we take on a lot of that, and we do it as a default, and then it becomes the expectation. And then now we have all of this emotional labor that maybe we've taken on, we've owned it, or we've given some people some outs by not making them have to keep it. And then it becomes the expectation. And so some of the men folks can almost default to, go make the copies, go staple those, Maria. Can you make the reservations? Or hey, like again, and there's times where that's part of our job, But I'm like you, Maria. If I have to call and make a doctor's appointment, I have to call
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's a bill that's wrong. Like
Um,
I'm just like, how do we fix this? I don't want to have to go through sitting on a phone, waiting, having to have the conversation, even though that is part of life.
Mhm.
So I know Jesse's on here for a reason. What's up, Jesse?
Well, a couple things. Y'all touched on the fact that that it's not a feminine exclusive experience to have emotional labor and disappointment. Because what I'm hearing this conversation is a lot about the disappointing end of the emotional labor, which is a reality.
Mhm.
And how, like, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not like guys don't have that experience. It's just not okay for us to
Right.
say so.
Sure it is.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do want to point on that because I watched a different podcast that I think Thomas did.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking about this particular topic, and you got really vulnerable in the fact that you had an experience that you had something happen and you were trying to help people with risk, and you were told, man up, like
Yeah.
be a man. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about, is like that shoving down. You're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to see all of these things that women have typically been more in tuned with over time. And
Yes.
so you were told it's not acceptable.
Correct. Now the tides are turning, right?
Mhm.
Like people now, there are people that are being courageous and getting support after me talking about my emotional labor, or my disappointment around it. Because that was kind of one of my big takeaways from the conversation, was a lot of the emotional labor, I'm going to do it anyways. But when it hurts, when it's an irritation, is when my expectation of somebody else's response to the emotional labor I deployed, that's where it becomes a problem for me. And also, but I'm going to jump off right now, but there was like a really, really insightful question. And I think we need to answer it. And I think all of y'all should.
Yeah,
answer it.
let's.
So here's the
Oh my God.
question. And I'll see y'all in a minute.
What? How do all of us answer that?
Oh, answer it about.
I think it just means we all have to answer it. That just happened to be addressed to me. So I think the question was, what labor do we overlook the most? So I'm going to start because I dealt with something this week specifically that was, I had blinders on. And then I'll give y'all some time to think about it. So
Last.
So emotional labor. So we were talking about emotional labor. And then earlier, Jesse pulled up uncommunicated expectations.
Mhm.
And so when we stop and think about that specifically, it's I have an expectation of someone
Mhm.
and I am not clear on what I need, what I want, and so because I didn't communicate that very clearly, and then they don't do what I'm expecting, I'm disappointed, I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, yet it's not their fault if I didn't communicate that. So that, to me, when you hear uncommunicated expectation, that's where I go. This week, I experienced that in a different way. Is sometimes we are creating emotional labor for people, uncommunicated expectations that are not what we want. That are not what we expect, but because of our actions and because of how we function, we put that on other people. So I'm going to give the example is I have someone that I care about deeply that works closely with me.
Mhm.
Okay. And I function at 100 miles an hour all the time. Most people know that. And I go, my foot's on the gas and I go. And sometimes I go until I can't go. And then I have to stop and I have to take a break and then I go again. That's how I function. And I try to, space things in there and stuff like that. But then my brain doesn't let me. And this week I was having a conversation with someone who helped support me. And I was saying, I really need to take some time. And she said, Jennifer, it is so hard to be someone in your space and support you without feeling like we let you down if we don't function in the same space.
Oh,
And so, just a second.
thank you for that expression. Thank you.
So what that slapped me in the face with
Mhm.
is when we function the way we do. Okay, even if we don't have those expectations for other people, which I don't. I don't have those expectations that people are going to function the exact same way I do. But because I do it and I don't allow space for myself to take care of myself, and I'm not clear and I'm not doing the things that we really need to make sure we're allowing for other people, the expectation is that they are going to function exactly the way I do. And that's not fair. Yet it would never have that expectation. And I've even been super clear on them taking time, them doing things. But she said, if I make a choice to do something for myself, I feel like I'm letting you down because I'm not functioning at the level you are. That's an uncommunicated expectation that I don't have. Yet that is emotional labor that not only has been put on her, but it is keeping her from taking care of herself. Like that, this week was like that hit me, and I've not been able to let it go. Like I've been thinking about that all week to the point to where we had to intentionally put time in, and it's, one step. But for me, that's what I overlook the most is I don't put my expectations on other people because I know different people function in different ways, but it didn't matter because they were still there. And because they care about this person cares about me. They care about how I function. They care about my results. They want to make sure that I am having success, and they are a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is hurting them. And anyway, that to me, that's an overlook that I'd never even considered until, again, we had a very honest, open conversation, and I appreciated her sharing that. But it also made me have to self-reflect a lot more than I have before.
I guess my question for you, Jen, would be, I automatically start to think about that particular person. And is that really you, or is that something from their past that has made them feel that particular way? Like maybe they've had to take care of a parent that was an alcoholic, or and that's how they've learned to deal with things. And so it may have nothing actually to do with you.
100%. And actually that came up in the conversation. So she said specifically, Jennifer, there's nothing you've done that should make me feel this way. But prior to working with you, I was in another company working in another role. And the expectation was, get there before me, you stay later than me, you do all these things. And she even referenced it as PTSD. Like, I know you and I know your expectations, but because of that, and that's how I was groomed and conditioned, even now I know that's not you, but that is what I'm trained to do. And when you do it, I need to match you. I need to be there. And so yes, 100%, it may not be me, but that doesn't mean it's not my problem to deal with or to at least work with.
Yeah. And I would actually go back. I think it's probably not even just that company. I bet you it's something else. Because what I have found, and one of the reasons I think this topic is so important, is that really people, what I have found is that everyone is dealing with something that they haven't dealt with, whether it's their childhood, whether it's a marriage that failed, whether it's, they lost a child. I mean, all of those different types of things that people go through, those things become patterns that you end up having to mentally figure out, how do I break this? How do I overcome this? How do I make my patterns different? And that is emotional labor that leaders have to exude to try to understand the other things that people are going through that have nothing to do with their job, but allow them to be more authentic, allow them to be more present, to allow them to be their best self. That's emotional labor that leaders really should be doing.
100%.
Wait. We got to do another.
Yes, go.
Okay, I know I said I was last, but I'm just interjecting.
Oh, you're good. Go.
Thank you. I want to help everybody. I know we're talking about a new term already, but like, here's one more. So PTSD is traditionally used for a single event, right? Something traumatic happened, and that's what it is. So I'd like to welcome you all to CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And all that means is that you experienced that same trauma multiple times, over and over again. So someone being at a previous employer where they got treated that way, it being compounded by something in their childhood or even a marriage, you know, usually all the way up until yesterday, when they can identify the pattern and then figure out how to set those boundaries to put them in place and stop the pattern. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, so we're just going to let you keep it. We're just going to let you keep it because you got to answer the question too. I mean, I had to answer it. You have to answer it. What emotional labor do you overlook the most?
I would need it pointed out to me because I see it everywhere, all the time. I think I've only been on one job site visit, office visit, something like that, where it wasn't the women who were taking care of lunch for us. And so that's always something that I look for, right? Who's ordering lunch? That's also an amazing compliment that I can give my last supervisor at Robinson Morton. Not once did he ever ask me to schedule a meeting to go and see about lunch, right? None of that. Now we had people say, coming from out of town, hey, where do you suggest we make reservations for the group? Stuff like that. That's kind of different. We don't know the area, right? Of course they can Google, but they're asking you, hey, I'm taking you to dinner. Where do you want to go? So it's a little different, but I see it everywhere.
Okay. Cindy, what about you? What emotional labor do you overlook? And sometimes, again, I didn't know it till this week when it was pointed out to me. So good point, Maria. But what you got?
I need to point out.
Oh man. I feel like yesterday where it was like, I don't have any problems.
No, I have opportunities.
I have opportunities. Well, sometimes it's the blind spots. That is overlooking, but that is literally the blind spot. So like what you were saying, Jen, like when you don't know that you're doing something because of your own PTSD and things like that, it really takes a new group of people. That's why it's good that as you're getting older, you're exposing yourself to new people and things like that, because it kind of helps you see this is what you're doing. And then sometimes that's one thing I can say that going through reciprocal propulsion helped me see that was like, this is what I'm experiencing. Tell me what you think, and being okay with the feedback, because there were some things that you guys pointed out to me and you were like, have you done this? Have you tried this? And some of it I was like, yes, I've done this. I've tried this, because I'm very resourceful. Part of my thing growing up was you got to rely on yourself. So it was like, be resourceful, find the answers. Don't wait on other people. Don't rely on other people. So it allowed me, the bright side of it was it allowed me to be very, very independent, but too independent. So it's hard for me to learn how to connect with other people, rely on other people, and ask for help. So as one of the great things that I've experienced through the tribe is learning to ask for help, learning to say, hey, let me ask you this. Let me be vulnerable. Let me share this with you so that I can work through this and let me see if it's something I'm doing. And if it is, I can own that. I'm okay with that. But how do I do that? How do I work past that? But
okay.
it's being
yes. No. Finish.
No, it just that. It's just being okay with having other people point out your blind spots.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the receiving part, but it's also, and this is what has come up in a couple of conversations is in some of your feedback from the weekend is sometimes we just walk around and handle people with kid gloves because we don't want to step on toes. We don't want to push too hard. We don't want to upset somebody or say the wrong thing. And again, those are worlds we live in. Every one of us can probably name a place that happened. But your takeaway from that weekend, Cindy, and I don't want to use your words, but like it kind of got put in front of your face. Like it was either we can talk about a lot of things, we can all identify this and what about this, whatever. But what was that call to action when we left that weekend?
It's on your shirt. That's not my problem. Yeah, a lot of it was having enough of a people pleaser recovery session where you're just like, sometimes it's just not my problem. And it's not because you don't care, But being a woman, you have that caretaker part of you that wants to help. And sometimes it's just not up to you to help. Sometimes, it is that person having to face whatever trauma, PTSD issues that they've had that they haven't addressed on their personal end that now feeds into their professional end. And, letting them, either you can help them a little bit and then sometimes say, nope, I got to back off, but yes, it's not my problem.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to go, it's not my problem. Because if you have been in any conversation about emotional bungee jumpers, the goal is not, Cindy, you have a problem. Let me take your problem and let me fix it so you're better. That's not the goal. The goal is that you have a problem. I'm going to let you keep your problem, but I'm going to help you figure out how to work through it and come up with a solution without taking it away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a bad thing to go, that's not my problem.
Yeah. And that's how, that's how I was raised. That's
Right.
The unfortunate part is when you get put in situations where everybody thinks you're a very mature child. Let me talk to you about my problems. Let me bring these problems to you. And next thing you know, you're 10, 12, 15 years old solving adult problems that you have really no experience about. But because that's the people you're around, you get stuck in that. And then it just trains you. So the older and older you get, you're stuck in that cycle. So that's why I'm grateful that, I've been able to get to that point where now I receive that feedback more and I'm saying, yeah, you're right. That's not my problem. I can help you get there, or I can help walk you through there, but I'm not going to solve it for you.
100%. Okay, so what do we got here? Let's see what Jesse brought up here. So Mike, thank you. I see you're super engaged over there, so keep it up. In other words, this isn't new conceptually. Emotions can be as strenuous as physical labor. Ooh. So now that you're aware of that, what changes in your day-to-day? Amazing question and amazing concept. It's just as strenuous as physical labor. So Sarah, I know we haven't hit you yet. So we got a couple of things. What are some emotional labor areas that you overlook? And then let's dig into maybe that connection between strenuous physical labor and the toll it takes on our minds.
Yeah, I don't know that I overlook it, but I still continue to struggle with it. So as an example, this last week, I had multiple people out. I lost one of my main people and so I'm in the process of filling that position. I had someone out for vacation, another person that was out on vacation, one person got sick. So it's like all those things now, all of these things are now my responsibility as a leader. So it's like, I really can't do anything about it. Like someone's sick, someone's out on vacation. I don't have. So for me, I have to constantly think about, am I also taking care of me? And so I do little things like, okay, this morning, I'm just going to sit outside. I'm going to listen to the birds tweet. I'm going to just have my coffee, my breakfast. I'm going to take some time for myself. I'm going to make sure that I meditate at nighttime. And one thing I wanted to say about meditation is that different people need different types of meditation. My daughter, I think she meditates jumping on the trampoline because she's a physical person. And so it doesn't have to be, all it is just listening to yourself and what it is you need. That to me is what I have to continue to remind myself of, and what I need in order for my body to not take over and go, well, now I'm going to make you sick, or now I'm going to do this because you weren't taking care of you. And so that is a constant for me, that I am dealing with emotional labor because I'm having to take care of all of these things now, but I have to remind myself, take care of you as well.
So I love the point about the physical part, and then how you had connected that, because I brought this up probably on a previous show, but I want to talk about it again. Is for me, because one, I suck at taking time for myself, and what meditation or what does that look like for Jennifer is a physical act, and it needs to be something I've realized is, for me, it's walking, and it's walking because when I leave and I go walk, I can take nothing with me, nothing, earbuds, phone, paper, pen, anything that would allow me in a moment to go, oh, I got to write that down, or oh, I got to capture that, or oh, let me listen to this so that I can learn something new, so that I can go and apply. Like, that's my brain all the time. And when I started walking and bringing nothing with me, a couple of things started happening. Number one is I was stressed for like the first 15 or 20 minutes. And that is how does that, because the way my brain, it's like a thought was happening. Oh my God, I'm going to forget that. Oh my gosh. And like, oh, I got to write that idea down. But I've had to like push myself, and now it's way easier. But it also, and Jesse and I've talked about this, it allowed things to grow and foster and cultivate and turn into something that I would have never gotten to if I just stopped. Because, okay, I've walked my 15 minutes, I've checked the box, now I need to go back and do what I'm supposed to do. Because that's where, but by pushing myself to walk an hour, now, one, I've allowed myself to kind of clear my mind, get myself away from the things that drive me, but it also created space. And so the emotional labor part, I'm not saying it wasn't there the whole time, but the toll it was taking on me, I was able to work through it, and then it started to dissipate. And then all of a sudden there's space there for other things to happen. And I don't think we talk about emotional labor, talk about the lack of it, the addressing of it. We see it, we don't see it, we acknowledge it. But when we can remove some of it, like what could happen? So what are your thoughts on that concept? Oh, wait. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's my brother. That's my little brother. Let's see. You have to weigh whether or not it is worth your time on the emotional labor. Are you willing to solve the problem, not knowing how? So a little bit of context. George drives for Lyft. And so he, poor guy, there's a lot of times that because it's his job, and I don't know if you are an Uber or Lyft driver, you sometimes have no idea what's about to happen until someone gets in your car. Like you don't get, here's where you're going, here's what you're doing, here's the background, you don't get a lot of that information. And that's his livelihood. That's what he does. And I know a trip recently where he was compounded with emotional labor. So, and then we'll pose this out to y'all, is he got a ride, took the ride, and he whatever his parameters were, guy gets in and he needs a ride to Houston. We live in Dallas. That's like 5 hours away. And so at that point, this is the way he makes money. And so like we had plans later, and he's calling me and calling my brothers, like, what do I do? Because he's like, this is, he feels obligated, but he also feels bad. I mean, there's all these things. Like he had so many things going on in his head. He couldn't function. And we had to help kind of like, hey, you just have to say, this is, I can't do this. But the emotional labor, like he couldn't even like communicate, much less to the person that got in his car. Like, and that's an extreme example, but like how many times I call it taco mode, but you get to the point to where you can't function. And so I know that example. Oh God. Jesse said that all the time, but you get to the point to where you cannot even make a decision because of the emotional labor that is weighing you down. And I'll talk taco mode in a minute because most of you know what that is. But like, let's talk about. So two things we've talked about here: the action, and Sarah brought it up, of what we do to kind of meditate or get ourselves in a place where we can create space because the emotional labor is dissipates, or even some examples, and I know y'all have them, of where the emotional labor is so high and it's taking over so much that we can't function. So give me some examples of either of those of those two things.
Well, I had one recently.
Tell me.
I had a report. So in order for me to keep my mind sane day to day, I try to do a little bit every day for this report. And I was in a very emotional place earlier in the month, going through something very difficult. And because I wasn't paying attention, I deleted the report. So I beat myself up about it, of course. And I was like, see, this is why you're not supposed to do things when you're not in a good headspace. I was like, all right, it happened. Now what? And it took me a minute to say, okay, what can you do? Like not without the feeling, right? Balancing the masculine and feminine energy. It was like, okay, what can you do logically to help fix this? and then kind of breaking down the taco mode for me, which was like, you have all these different pieces, you're missing some pieces, but you know how to do this. You just basically have to recreate it from the beginning versus saving the time of doing it day to day. So it was breaking that down, because otherwise I would have just been stuck in this is the problem. But I was like, well, okay, I allowed myself some space to be a little emotional and to hear, it wasn't necessarily a meditating thing, but like you said, Sarah, just listening to your thoughts. I heard my thoughts, and I self-soothed in a way, which I was like, okay, yes, you did this. It's okay. Like, there's no point in dwelling in it more, because you're not going to fix it dwelling, right? So then once I got that, and then I just kind of started putting the pieces back together and just reassembling everything, and I got it done. It took me a lot longer than I wanted it to. And of course, even in that process, I was still struggling. I was still like, oh my gosh, like, why did that have to happen? And then I was like, quit focusing on it. It happened. Like, just let it go. So, but yeah, it did happen, but I had to keep acknowledging myself through it.
Well, the dwelling. You just said you used dwelling 2 times.
Yes, I could not dwell.
How much inactivity do we have because we are continually focused on something that if we would have just acknowledged it, this sucks. Now I got to do something again and moving on. We would have already sometimes even had it done by the time we're still in this moment of dwelling on how and why did this happen.
The waiting place.
And it allowed me to have a little bit more compassion for myself. Like, I was like, okay, yes. You made a mistake. It's okay. Because I'm that kind of person where, even my team knows, they're like, you make a mistake, it's a big deal. They're like, something had to have happened for you to make a mistake. And I'm like, yeah. And for me, it kind of also, it's my checks and balances. Like, when I do make a mistake, that kind of reminds me, like, hey, this is now time. You have reached your limit, whether you want it or not. This is now time for you to give yourself a break. So, and that was a really good thing yesterday too, was when, a lot of people leaving for the holiday weekend and things like that. So everybody's sending me emails and things. And I'm like, okay, I work from home, so I don't really have like a set schedule necessarily all the time. So I thought to myself, I just got back from traveling. I'm like, I'm going to try and catch up on some things. And then my sister says, hey, let's go to dinner. And I said, but I have things I need to work on. But I told myself, you know what? You're about to go out of town again. Spend the time while you're here and, unplug a little bit. And the time ended up going on longer. We ended up spending more time together throughout the evening, but it was fun. And it allowed me to disconnect. And even when we were talking, of course, they're like, well, how's work? And I was like, no, we're supposed to unplug. And as I was trying to explain to them what was going on and catching them up, they were like, we need to not ask you about work sometimes, huh? And I'm like, yeah, because I said, my job doesn't end at 5:00. And I said, which I'm grateful where I'm okay with it. But it was just kind of that finding the balance within yourself. Because I think work-life balance gets a little bit thrown around too much, where it sets unreasonable expectations for people. So you start comparing and you're like, well, this works for you. Why doesn't it work for me? It just has to be whatever works for you. And that's kind of where I found that outlet of just enjoy the time you have. And then everything's still going to be there, right?
Well, and okay, let's bring this up and then I'm going to comment. Let's see. So what we got, Justin, I think of Jesse saying, remove the burden from the people doing the work. As leaders, should we just try and remove the emotional burden? Labor isn't necessarily bad, but overburden is. Wow. So Jesse does say that. And a lot of times he's focusing on like our laborers out in the field and the things, what can we do to help make their work easier and less hard? Sorry, not easier, less hard. And sometimes we get so caught up on, the outcomes and the productivity and the things like that, we forget the human beings doing the work and how do we make their work less hard? So that's a whole nother live stream. But when we do that, do we also stop and think about the overburden of the emotional part? So did you have something? Sarah, I saw you kind of put your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, as Cindy was talking earlier, the other thing that I was thinking about was, and I think I mentioned this on the after party. One of the things that my mother, I think, did a good job in teaching me was she was a nurse and she had to deal with crises. And so she taught me to sort of stop in the moment. What is the one thing that you can do right now to deal with whatever the situation is? And so she really helped me to focus in on all of the chaos, all of the things going on. And so this is sort of crisis management. And it's one of the things that they teach is, what is the biggest thing that I can focus on right now, or the thing that I can do to help? And I think if we just stop, breathe, take a moment, like you said, open space, that is when a lot of times answers will flow to us, just like it did for Cindy. She was like, still, you got to leave the opening for the emotion that you were dealing with. Like, I'm still upset. Oh my gosh. but it's like, okay, there's nothing I can do about that. So how is it that I can now deal with that? And I think if we do that as leaders with our employees, like, it's okay. All right, let's stop for a moment. Let's think about what are the options and help them to go through what are the options. What do you think will help you the most in this situation? That's the best thing we can do.
Wow, yes.
And I
Oh
want
my
to point
gosh.
out, and I want to point
100%.
out, it's a thing I had to teach myself before anybody thinks like, oh, she's just naturally that. No. I used to be super reactive, and I still have moments, but it is going to be more proactive than reactive. And it was, figuring out what's the trigger, what's happening, when this happened, it caused me to react, whether it was emotionally or even saying something, without thinking. So it's a lot of that self-awareness, making that. And I think that's kind of what meditating really does for you, is it shows you, because nobody knows what's going on in your head. It shows you, this is what I keep repeating it to myself. Why am I saying that to myself over and over again? And so it gives you that space to say, okay, and then you can give yourself the compassion and do all the work and the self-soothing and things like that to overcome that. And then you see that change happen over time.
Well, and I love, Sarah, what you and Cindy both said, because what resonated in my head is, what do we have control over?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get so caught up and so wound up on the moments. And I mean, I talk about this with my 12 and 14-year-old daughters as they come home, and it's, this girl did this and this and that. And we talk about all these things, and we have to stop and go, okay, but what can you control? And you can control what you say, your responses, but you can also control how you take that in. And like, that's a big concept for us as adults that have lived a life, and that have, and much less for, kids that are teenagers and things like that. But everything happens, and it's like, we live sometimes in these moments where we are going out of control. We're frustrated. Okay, what is the thing we can control? And Cindy, you hit on this, on just what was that one thing that you can just like reset, and then this is what I'm going to do, take a breath. And I mean, to me, that's huge, because then it's that emotional labor. There's tons of comments over there, but like, how can we control how it impacts us? Those are, things that we have to do. And the level of when it can take over. And so, yeah, Jesse, why are you here? What's up?
So we've got 12 minutes left. So I wanted to make sure we we're coming to a close, but also there's a ton of comments.
Okay.
And because we have so many amazing people on the screen, it keeps covering your face. So I just want to read them out loud and recognize.
Yes, please.
The men that share.
Yes, thank
right?
you.
We love them. We love them.
We love them. Welcome.
So Robert says, to me, Robert Venkat, to me, emotional labor would be the daily exertion spent communicating and cultivating relationships, both personal and professional. Like it takes freaking effort. Ian says, my take is emotional labor is the expounded energy that places strain on your mental capacity. There's so many things that can affect our mental health, which may include the amount of difficulty to get something accomplished, the stress or pain to have a difficult conversation, and the time to do so. Right?
Yes, 100%.
Let's see. Oh, Mike. All right. Mike backing up the brothers. He says, I also disagree that men are starting to deal with these things. Socially, it has been historically unacceptable for men to emote publicly. It's not macho, manly, tough, etc. The world is changing to make this more acceptable for us, but that doesn't mean that it's like acceptable. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that are going on out there that there's some adjustment being had, but that doesn't mean it has happened. And so we're working in that direction. And then Clyde also said, oh, darn it, I just lost it. He said something about the physical exhaustion of work, like becoming physically spent because of the labor, and the relationship or connection to how his emotions will come out or are maybe even less manageable in that type of situation. And so kind of bringing that all together, we're talking about emotional labor, and here's what I'm seeing is like emotional labor is always happening, right? It's the behind the scenes. It's the extra little thought that we put into things. It's all the little invisible things that nobody else sees. What seems to be the problem to me is when I get offended by it. I get disappointed because nobody recognized it, or somebody made a decision or made a comment that brought to light, well, you son of a gun, like I did all these things and this is what you're going to do, or you're asking me to do that. And like, that's not mine. Like for me, the emotional labor to not tell somebody that they're stupid, that's a lot of labor on my part, right? Like the emotional, like, so, and for me, it's almost it's a reactive response or a reactive state of mind for me to be thinking about my emotional labor, because I don't think about it until somebody done pissed me off. How far off base am I, y'all?
No,
Yeah,
100%,
that's what I was saying
100%.
about teaching yourself to not be reactive.
So it's sitting so hard. Okay, so like, here's where it is, because I mean, hi, once upon a time, maybe a member of the reactive crew. So when you feel it, right, because you can feel your blood pressure going up, that's when you say, right. And for me, I have standard scripts. Okay, like I picked a sentence that is kind to me, and I express it, right. So I feel it coming up. It's like, I cannot discuss that right now. And I would love to discuss that with you next week when I have more capacity, or whatever that time that is, right? Because you're letting the person know, I can't talk about this right now. And you're important enough to where I do want to talk about it. I just can't right now. Okay. Now there's a couple of things that happen, right? There's a few people that are like, well, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then that's when you're in a situation where you can betray your choice, right? But it's that person. So then I would say to self, if you know that person is that type, right? Then I would have a different boundary with that person.
And I think, Jesse, talking about unmet expectations, that does kind of tie into being proactive. Because if you express those expectations, if you have that level of communication within yourself where you can tell somebody, this is what I want, this is what I'm expecting, and of course, some of it comes with how comfortable you are with that person, right? So if it's a friend and they do something that pisses you off, you say, hey, I don't like that, you did this. That's the proactive effort that happens versus being reactive, like, I'm just going to cut you off, I'm out. So it's that self battle that you have to kind of fight within yourself to say, okay, what am I going to do to hopefully have a different approach? And I think we talked about that a little bit yesterday too, and what you were sharing, and I'm not going to say it, but in Emotional Bungee Jumpers, where you were saying, like, how do I change from reacting this way versus to this? And that's that proactive approach.
And I want to add that this is something that I had to learn for myself as well. So for example, my husband is not, he admits himself that he's not very empathetic. So it's just not natural for him to, like, if I'm sick, to give me empathy. So one of the things I actually learned is that if I want empathy, I flat out ask for it. I say, right now, I need empathy. And so for me, if that's my expectation, I need to communicate it. And I've had situations where people don't show up, and I let them know, like, look, I'm letting you know that this for me was disrespectful. You aren't respecting my time. You're telling me that I'm not important in this situation. But I think the challenge with this is that people get so uncomfortable with being assertive, which is for me the masculine energy, balancing it with the feminine energy of the expectation and the emotional labor of expecting certain things. So you got to learn how to balance those two to explain, this is my expectation. What are your thoughts on this? And then doing the back and forth.
Yes.
Yes. I want to go.
People pleasing side that people are like, oh, but I can't tell someone that. I'm like, yeah, you can.
What's
So
the
Mike-
feedback? It's the feedback.
Mike added, Clyde also said something earlier that's very slept on. Not only is he aware when he's emotionally triggered, but he has a safe space to go and deal with it and a healthy way to cope.
Oh, pray tell.
All right. So he was talking about when he is in that state of like whatever. For me, it's emotional hangover, right? Like the emotional labor that I often miss is when I experience highs. And I experience a bunch of them because when you're this sexy, it's happens frequently.
Yeah.
When that happens, like it's amazing interacting with people, being present, being connected. On the back end of that is a fast drop in terms of energy and we'll say decisions, right? I'll make just emotional, short-sighted decisions. And so like my space is home with no way for people to contact me. And if you do and I don't answer, I'm alive. I'm alive. Don't worry about that, because I'm recovering from whatever that experience was. But it took a lot for me to become aware of the fact that when I'm most vulnerable to it is after a high, which is similar. Like Maria, you were talking about, there's also people that I know, like, ooh, after I talk to that fool, I'm going to need to I'm going to have to prep and then I'm going to have to recover because it's a difficult situation. So the same thing for me is like these highs that I experience. I have to be prepared for those things and understand the appropriate conditions that help me recover, not just like alone. Like there's specific conditions that I need for that to be a meaningful experience.
I don't remember where we. Perfect, great share. Which question it was earlier, but everybody's kind of dancing around it. But I just want to go ahead and flat out say it. So, everybody's got, and it's the spoon theory to me. That's how I originally learned it. But I think in this crowd of builders, a better comparison is batteries. Okay, when your battery's dead, no more go. Okay, so it's the same with all the energy that you get for the day, right? Depending on how well you slept, what you eat, did you eat it right before you went to bed, right? All these things that happen to do that. So maybe your battery is only 75% full for the day, right? But the point is, that's how much you have to go. So once, and all these relationship interactions, right, pull some of that battery. So even if you have an amazing, awesome conversation with Jen, that's still, right? Nothing bad happened. Nothing, like, she didn't ask me to go book her lunch, right? But just the fact that I used some of my battery that I got for the day to do that, right? Like right now, I'm ready to yawn.
Yep.
So personally, I tried to, and I don't remember how the question came up, but I say all that to explain that it's so in my face nowadays that I plan my emotional labor, right? So if I know I've got so many difficult conversations I need to have or think about or resolve and ask self about, conversations with myself, right? They're scheduled just like manual labor is. The same way you're going to plan to do your laundry, doesn't go so well, but like journaling might go better. So it's planned, right? Who's the priority? Which ball can I drop right now because this one has priority?
Love it.
I love that. And I know you're about, I just want to make one comment, Jesse, and then you can close it out. But I love that because do we think about those meetings or those conversations that we know are going to take a toll on us? And do we schedule them back to back? Because I suck at going, ooh, I'm going to have to lead this meeting, then go into this one and actually present something, and then go into this one and have a tough conversation. Like, what am I thinking? Like, that's a great concept, Maria, of like planning those things that you know are going to be very high on that emotional labor toll. I love that.
They don't even have to be high, just regular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where you learn. That's where you learn what again, the proactive versus reactive. You learn what's going to make you more reactive and where you can try and plan a little bit more ahead of time.
Yes.
Self-awareness, baby. And if you want more of it, join the emotional bungee jumpers. So it's 9:15 or it's 15 after the hour, because I know we got people in all kinds of time zones. We're gonna jump off now with the super, like, Jen, I hope you got the choreograph down with the ladies for our exit dance. But we got the after party. The link is all in the different socials. So folks, this was an amazing conversation. I'm eager to hear where it's going to go, what it's going to evolve in.
Yes.
Folks out there, appreciate y'all very much. And like Ian Smith said, protect your energy. Be the best version of yourself.
Yes.
And we'll see y'all next time. Time for the dance. Y'all ready?
Yes. You ready?
Okay, fine.